Okay, I'll call to order the work session of the Wilsonville City Council of March 2nd, 2026 at 5 p.m. I'll start by asking councilor comments on the agenda and items on consent. Are there any? Okay. Any councilor concerns? Okay. Turning now to our work session. First up is SILL Forgivable Loan, Coffee Creek Day Roads and Sewer. Oh, it was too fast, huh?
Took a page out of my book, you know?
Is that the aerial, Kim?
Be on your toes. Gotta be on your toes.
I apologize.
No, not a problem.
It's a long night. You want to get started on time, right? Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Matt Lorenz, and I'm the city's Economic Development Manager. I'm here tonight representing engineering as well as economic development. Amy Mogg is listed on the staff report. She's not here this evening, but she'll be the project manager for the Day Road Sewer Design Project. I'm mainly here to answer questions if you have any. What you have is a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a financing agreement with Business Oregon, who has committed to $250,000 of our design costs toward the design of sewer in Day Road to serve both Basalt Creek and Coffee Creek industrial areas. The map shows the project area highlighted in yellow, and those tax lots that would be direct beneficiaries, those with a connection to the line, but certainly the broader industrial areas are beneficiaries as well. So if there are questions, I will take those.
Any questions?
Maybe one last thing to say is just that this is structured as a forgivable loan, which is a little unusual. We typically would just receive grant funds, but as long as we complete the design, there's no obligation for repayment, and the principal amount is forgiven. So it's just a little bit different. It's the way they've set it up. But there's no job creation commitment. There's nothing like that. It's just strictly do the design work and you're met your responsibility.
Thank you. I think we're good to go. Next up is Public Safety Council goal update.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Amanda Guile-Hinman, City Attorney, and with me coming up is Hannah Young, our law clerk, who just got out of school. So she hustled down here for these two presentations that you have for you tonight. I will mainly be tackling the first presentation on RVs and abandoned vehicle code potential policies, and then Hannah will be taking the lead on the graffiti discussion. So first, starting with RVs and abandoned vehicles, the agenda for this presentation starts again with an overview of the council goals. I know council's very well aware of them. We'll get into a little bit of background. We'll go over the proposed programs, both looking at potential code updates regarding abandoned vehicles and parking in general, and then the RV parking permit program. We'll talk about next steps, and then any questions that we can go over that council may have. So the questions for council for tonight, they're outlined in the staff report. First, if council wants to proceed with code updates that are proposed for abandoned vehicles and parking limitations. And then secondarily, does council want to further consider a pilot RV parking permit program? If the answer to that second question is yes, we need further discussion around how council wishes to define RVs. We gave some examples in one of the attachments to the staff report of other jurisdictions and how they define RVs. That's going to be critical for determining who's subject to the RV permit program. So by way of background, as council is aware, council identified its council goal number 2, which is around public safety updates, and has 5 specific strategies that around the public safety updates. One of those strategies is looking for investigating enforcement solutions for RVs. And under this particular strategy, we've looked at parking regulations, abandoned vehicle regulations, and plans for community outreach. So that particular strategy we brought to council on a work session in July. We did some community outreach. We gave an update to council on that outreach, that feedback in December. So basically last time we left with council was council asking to look at draft policies and programs to decide what you all wanted to do to move forward. As part of all of this work, we've done extensive code research throughout our code and other jurisdictions' codes as potential models. We've done outreach with other jurisdictions, particularly around the RV enforcement. We've engaged with the community through questionnaires and done questionnaires for impacted groups, including HOAs and individuals who have RVs. So we're going to start first with the parking and abandoned vehicles potential updates. So as council saw in its council packet, we've proposed some draft updates to our code around parking and abandoned vehicles. The first is a recommendation or an option of reducing the standard parking time limit from 72 hours to 48 hours. Throughout jurisdictions, I would say 72 hours is maybe the default, it's kind of the common rule, but generally speaking, you can find parking limitations anywhere from 24 to 72 hours, and in some jurisdictions where they have specific areas where they want further limitations, they'll do regulations like you see in Portland, or where they do time limits of 2 hours or less, things like that. But generally, I would say 24 to 72 hours, with 72 hours being the most common. The reason that we talked a little bit about shortening that timeline is I think that one of the frustrations that we hear from community members is they witness a vehicle being parked for 72 hours, because that's the time that somebody's allowed to park. They then report that. Then it needs to be observed by a public official, either law enforcement or code enforcement, for 72 hours. So really, we're looking at 144 hours of potential parking before a citation is issued. By shortening that time frame by 48 to 48 hours, you're looking at 96 hours instead of the 144 potentially of that observed parking time limit. So it doesn't eliminate it, but it does definitely shorten the time frame that a vehicle may be parked outside in front of somebody's house or whatever the case may be. The second thing that we are looking at is updating the abandoned vehicle definition, and I think, again, this is adding to that our toolbox. Right now, the way our abandoned vehicle definition is worded, it talks about that a vehicle must be inoperable or wrecked, dismantled, junked. It doesn't give opportunity for determinations of what law enforcement or code enforcement may think is inoperable, disabled, or junked. So it kind of takes it from objective, who's deciding when something is inoperable or disabled or junked, versus, okay, our code enforcement is making that determination because of their experience and, looking at the vehicle, documenting what it looks like. In addition, right now, our definition of abandoned vehicle says nothing about if a vehicle is parked on a public street and doesn't have valid registration, doesn't have insurance. So these are elements that we are recommending to add to the abandoned vehicle definition. This is modeled after other jurisdictions' code. In particular, we were looking at McMinnville's code. So basically, it will be considered an abandoned vehicle if you are parked for 24 hours rather than the 48 or 72 hours. For only 24 hours, and also you meet any of these conditions. You don't have to meet them all, and even one is enough. So, for example, if a vehicle is parked for 24 hours and doesn't have unexpired tags, that could be deemed abandoned. So you can see how quickly now, like how much more expedited that process can be of potentially leading to a tow of a vehicle, just by simply changing a definition. And then if a vehicle does need to be towed, it's a 24-hour, under Oregon law, we're required to give 24 hours notice in most cases before a tow occurs. So really what you're looking at is 24 hours of observation, a notice of 24 hours, and then there's the ability to tow. So it's it's a much more expedited process potentially. For some of these problem vehicles that we hear about, I think, I would say this isn't a robust problem, but when the problem occurs, it can feel like it's there for a while. And so it's a way to expedite that process for those problem vehicles.
Go ahead.
So if it's 12 hours and then 24-hour notice, like you said, it's really 24 hours on the front end, because 12
Right.
hours being there, somebody calls it in, 12 hours of observation, 24 hours of notice. So if, let's say it's an expired registration tag. And the vehicle moves down the street. Does that 12 hours start over then?
I think what we said, well, let me look at the code. Let me look at the draft code, because maybe there's an opportunity for some clarity. So it just says that is parked or kept on a public right-of-way for more than 24 hours. So I would say as long as it's on right-of-way, it doesn't matter about moving. As long as
Okay.
it's on the right-of-way for that period of time.
Okay,
So even if they move 3 car lengths, if they're still on the street, that's still a problem. It's not going to restart the clock.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Now, if they went and parked on private property, that would, in all likelihood, restart the clock.
Okay, so if I
Yeah, yeah.
could ju- even though it may not restart the clock, I can see a number of things. How is one going to tell? You might have 2 different people that contact, law enforcement that they saw it here. So it's going to have to be reported, and law enforcement actually has observed that
That's
it's
correct.
moved.
Well, law enforcement's going to have to observe it. Yes.
Okay, and then when it comes to the parking at Town Center on private area, they'd still have to wait until the owner of the land notifies.
That's correct. These code provisions only apply to our public right-of-way. It does not apply to private property.
Okay, and we have a lot of private property where these end up, so, okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, but we do have cases, I would say often, the cases that do come up, again, they're infrequent, but they can be a problem when they're a problem, is that it's that 72 hours of parking and the 3 car lengths they can move. So there's these workarounds that currently exist because our abandoned vehicle definition doesn't address the issue of just being on a city street and not having proper tags or being insured or whatever the case may be.
Thank
Well, and I think what the mayor's getting to there is kind of the continuation of this cat and mouse game of, that we're experiencing currently that is frustrating for citizens and business owners as they constantly have to kind of cycle this issue, and it doesn't feel like there's a good solution for it. Would there be any options to have any kind of enhanced enforcement for, significantly expired registration, 6 months or more? Because somebody could, send their check in, their vehicle could be registered, they don't have a tag on there yet. That happens commonly. It's where we've seen, I think, a lot of these issues are vehicles that just have gone unexpired, or unregistered, completely expired, and they tend to be the ones that we play this game with more often.
Yeah, so both in the county code, so relevant for law enforcement, and then in our city code, we actually do have language that talks about tags that are more than 90 days expired, that you can do a notice for a tow. So I think getting to your question about that is more of an administrative implementation discussion and internal discussion about pursuing that more aggressively. than we have in the past.
Okay.
And so I don't necessarily think that needs a code update. I think that's more an implementation discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you would do an anticipated communication outreach to like landowners, landowners around about this updated process. So I think.
About the abandoned vehicle
A
definition?
lot of
or-
this, because I think the more education you give them about these changes, the more likelihood they'll respond quicker to the city on those.
Yeah, we absolutely can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments or concerns?
And I will say, I was, during my time at McMinnville, issues around RVs was, and continues to be, a very lively discussion. These are the kinds of tools that they started to implement to help address some of those concerns. So a lot of the updates that we are looking at are from jurisdictions from, 2018 on, where you started to see some proliferation issues, how other cities have responded to them.
Thank you.
I'll move on to the RV parking permit program unless there's other questions about the code.
Councilor Scholl.
So, I understand this from an abandoned vehicle perspective, but, we have a list of criteria there to determine what's bad and what's not. But what about the other cars that are, residents leave on the street that, actually go more than 48 hours, they're out there for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yep.
Is there somewhere in a sub-criteria that fits into these rules too?
So that wouldn't be under our abandoned vehicle definition, but it would be in the updates that we proposed to 5.200 and 5.210, and the 5.405, which is the 48 hours. So basically, what we're offering as a proposal to council, so set aside abandoned vehicles, that's gonna be one regulation. Everyone else in Wilsonville can only park on a street in a specific spot for 48 hours
Okay.
instead of 72. So there's basically two proposals in this code update. One is around defining abandoned vehicle, and two is reducing overall parking time limits,
Okay.
or
Thank you.
updating the definition to abandoned vehicle, and then the overall update to 48 hours. Okay, so the next one is on the RV parking permit program. So this is attachment 2 to the staff report, and it lays out basically a program, an option for a program that council has discussed around RV parking permits. So what it would look at is offering a free RV parking permit for 72 hours. I will say, as council knows, there's 4 jurisdictions that have a current program. That's Gresham, Kaiser, McMinnville, and Sandy. And so these provisions, some of them are, one paragraph are their regulations, and it's basically just an administrative process that outlines the details. And then others are more robust in their actual program language. So what's proposed here is kind of borrowing from various different of those 4 jurisdictions. So all of them really are around a free permit for 72 hours. I think it was Kaiser that does the no more than 10 days in a 90-day period as a overall cap. And then in prior council discussions, we talked about how many permits people could get per year. I think the standard one was 6. And we talked about that might not be enough, so we upped that to 10. Of course, that's council's discretion if you want to see more or less permits being offered. One of the things that we also included in here that is not included in any of the other programs that we looked at is an annual pass opportunity. So that would be kind of like our residential parking permit program, where annually residents can apply for a parking permit to park on the street next to their house. And that has a fee associated with it. So we kind of incorporated that program idea for individuals, residents who have RVs and maybe want to get an annual pass rather than just applying for a free pass, as needed. So it's an option. Council could say you don't want to do it, or you'd like to do it, but you want to make changes. That's totally fine. But like I said, that's not something that's offered by the other programs. It was something that actually was suggested in the community feedback we received from the outreach. And then finally, just a note that we'll need to talk about the definition of RVs if council wants to move forward with the RV parking permit. What we're proposing, because we're talking about a lot of changes here, especially if we're doing the code update as well as the RV parking permits. So what staff is recommending is, if council is interested in looking at this program, that we do a 3-year pilot to determine efficacy, and then staff would report back on the first 6 months, and then annually during that 3-year period. So that way, when we're coming up on the 3 years, council could decide, is this a program we want to make permanent in our code? Do we want to extend it for another 3 years and keep testing it out, or do we want to move on with other options, or whatever the case may be? So I'm happy to answer any questions on the RV parking permit program, the draft that's proposed in the staff report.
Excuse me. I would think that the state or the DMV has already a definition of RVs. We could
Yes.
just use that.
Yes, that is one of the definitions that's proposed. So if you go to, I think it's attachment 3 of the staff report. This is on page, I have a print copy, so it's page 15 of my staff report. I'm not sure if that's page 15 on your PDF, but it has different definitions. So the state statute, that's ORS 174-101 sub 3. So we could just go with that. That's what some jurisdictions do. Kaiser adopted that. McMinnville has its own definition, as does Gresham and Sandy. Portland has a definition. So we offer different options if council is not of any opinion, I'd say probably just go with the state statute. But if you like one of the other definitions, or, modifying one of the other definitions, then that's completely doable.
And then just a follow-up comment, and my concern, if we go to the pilot program, then that means that we potentially would tow a vehicle.
Correct.
And then the expense of that we don't have budgeted at all. So whether it's pilot or permanent,
Yep.
we run the risk of incurring that, so.
Yep, so one of the things that I was originally thinking about putting in this staff report, and I decided not to, was if council wants to move forward with the RV parking permits in particular, and also depending on the discussion on graffiti, we will do another work session before council adopts this to talk about funding. Because at that point, if you're talking about parking permits, updating the abandoned vehicle definition and lowering the parking time limits, and also some of the graffiti options that we're looking at, we could very easily be looking at significant enforcement costs that are not budgeted this year and are not planned. We haven't put in a request for that budget for next year. So if that's something that if council's saying, yes, please, let's do it all, we need to have a funding discussion before we bring that forward to council for adoption.
Councilor Skoll.
I think you just answered some of my question, but does it really cost $7,000 to $10,000 to tow a motorhome? And
Minimum.
does that include storage?
The most expensive cost is because we have to treat it as, we have to dispose of the hazardous waste.
Oh,
The
okay.
waste in an RV is considered hazardous, and so there's special requirements. So first off, it's challenging even to find a tow company that will take them. Second is the storage cost because they're larger, and the third is the disposal. The disposal cost is by far and away the most expensive part of it.
Okay.
So I would say 7 is very low. On average, what we're paying is around 10 per tow.
So are there fines for the owners, or if they want to recover, do they have to pay that number plus?
They
A
would have to pay that, but if we're towing an RV, we're not anticipating to recoup that
Right,
cost.
it's a junker.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's the same for, what's the cost to tow an auto?
I might ask Gina, she might know. I think it was $800 was the last one. I could be wrong. It's much less.
I think it's worth like 500, depending on how far the facility is.
Yeah, it's roughly around $800-ish to tow. But Amanda's right, to tow an RV is incredibly expensive, so we would want to make sure that we have a conversation about budgeting for that.
Yeah, because we could end up, I mean, there's junker motorhomes and cars all over the place, and we end up putting the bill to tow all that stuff and store it somewhere, and it's an expense to the city that we'll never recover. And so that is a big consideration, and that's minus the administrative costs.
Yeah, one of the other things that we've been talking about, so when you look at what are the causes or what are the barriers that potentially cause delays, one of them is actually finding a tow company that will take them. So if we're going down this path, and why a dedicated funding source is necessary is not only the expense, but we likely will need to get under contract a company that says they will tow these whenever we're asking for it. Because right now, we can see a few days delay just trying to get a tow company lined up to do the tow for RVs. There's just not that many that do it.
City Council President Barry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the report and all the energy that was put into it. I tend to agree with your staff recommendation that our goals to balance livability concerns with reasonable regulations. In my mind, fewer regulations makes a city a lot more livable. I would be tending to wanting to update the code language and maybe the parking time limits, but forego the permit program.
Okay, well, that was a segue into the staff recommendation. Thank you. Thank you, Council President. Yeah, so as reflected in the staff report, the staff recommendation at this point is to do the code update, see what happens as a result of the code update. Because we think that when we talk about what tools are we missing, I think for us as staff, the tools that we're missing are really around how we're defining abandoned vehicle and being able to more expeditiously respond to issues when they're identified by a community member. And so I think for us, what we would like to see is, does that work? Is that sufficient before we're introducing an entirely new permit program? So not to say it's off the table, but to basically understand, does this address the concerns that we've heard from the community? And then if not, okay, what's the next layer? The next layer may be the RV permit program at that time.
Councilor Cunningham.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It seems like a balanced approach. We're definitely, I think that we've given this issue, its due regard in addressing it and addressing the concerns of the community that have arisen from some of these issues. I know that it's still an ongoing thing, but from my perspective and what I've seen and heard and talked to some different folks, it has improved significantly since kind of the height of the issue, obviously. So I do support that the change in the code language, but that we do keep the permit program on the back burner, and we can pull it out if it feels like the code changes aren't as effective as we had hoped.
Any other comments? Okay. I concur with that as well.
Okay, so again, depending on how all the code enforcement discussion plays out, we are looking at a spring, bringing back in spring of this year, code recommendation for council's consideration, so an ordinance for council to consider. And then right now, we are anticipating completing council goal number 2 in the fall of this year. So any other, I think we've got direction to move forward, and if so, I'll segue over to graffiti.
The exciting one.
Yep. Okay, let me pull this up for Hannah.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I appreciate your patience. It was a bit getting over here, but I'm excited to bring back our conversation following our last work session in which we discussed our graffiti tip rewards program, as well as a few other of the programs that we talked about back in September. To give you just an overview of where we'll be going is we'll just briefly review those council goals that we've talked about, give a little bit of background on the research, and then we'll jump right into the proposals, which, as you can see, are listed there. So the questions for consideration tonight are going to be what, if any program council would like to move forward with, or if there are any other updates or changes to those programs as they are currently proposed. It's just a little bit of background. We identified within our public safety goal changing and improving response times to graffiti abatement, particularly related to private property rather than just city property. We also gave a rewards program update regarding tips for graffiti and vandalism within the city back in January. Some of the research strategies that we employed included jurisdictional research, as well as a lot of interdepartmental discussions between those departments that would be impacted most, including Public Works and Parks and Recreation. So we can just jump right into the program. So first we have our most recent, which was our tip rewards program. That, just as an overview, is a $250 reward for residents that provide meaningful assistance in reporting and the arrest, given qualifying information, and then filing a claim for the reward within 90 days following that arrest. Just one note that we did talk about last time was, since our municipal court does not prosecute misdemeanors here, we would only, unlike other jurisdictions, we'd only require the arrest to be made rather than a full judgment. And then our next program is a graffiti subsidization, specifically for private property owners. This is where residents would apply for a reimbursement either for smaller projects, like the supplies that they purchased, or a larger subsidization for professional removal services. The differences here would be, it would be like a receipt attached to the form in order to be reimbursed for up to half of the supplies, and then modeling after our sidewalk subsidy program, which is this program kind of originated from. We'd be, residents would provide 3 bids to the city in their application, and of the lowest, the city would subsidize half of that cost. And then we have our removal loaner kits. This would just be a full loaner kit that would remain available at a pickup location that can be decided later. A couple of the options that we thought of were either the library or the Parks and Rec administrative building. In this program, the resident would just apply, come pick it up, and then finish their project and return it. These cost around $150. We got recommendations from Parks and Recreation on full kits that are actually sold online already, and those range for around, like I said, $150, and those would cover probably a multitude of projects before we'd have to replace them. And then finally, we have our volunteer opportunities and qualified locations. So this would utilize volunteer groups in order to remove graffiti from qualified locations that might not otherwise fall under Public Works and Parks and Recreation's purview. That would include small businesses, nonprofits, and then any space, private or public, that would include like hate speech or any other content that wants to be taken care of. Obviously, we have a very great response time for public property so far. The main focus would be on private property. And then, so if council wants to move forward with any of these programs, the draft resolution can be done sometime in the spring, and similarly to the RV project, end completion date around fall 2026. Some future funding and staffing considerations. This is where a lot of the interdepartmental review kind of displayed some just considerations that we'd like council to discuss if possible is, as we kind of mentioned earlier, the funding considerations when it comes to just abatement programs in general, and maybe a conversation surrounding a general nuisance fund in which a line item can be created and it can go towards whatever project that the city actually needs it to, whether that be like subsidization of the graffiti or a loaner kit cost and replenishment. A big thing that we talked about was the ongoing public works and parks and recreation staffing capacity. It is my understanding that this would be the biggest issue if it came to specifically the volunteer opportunities when it comes to managing volunteers, organizing them, and then in the event that there is reported graffiti and no volunteers available at that time, that would then fall on staff to cover. And at this point, we want them to keep doing how they're doing and keeping the response times up for what they're already at capacity for. So that's another consideration to think about. So our staff recommendation in particular is especially to, I think the loaner kits would probably be the best. It's going to be on the lowest end of the cost and something that can be easily maintained. We've already talked to code enforcement in which they are willing to assist in that project of either managing the kits or otherwise. And additionally, the graffiti subsidization program is another thing that, since it mirrors so closely our sidewalk reimbursement program, it is very, it would be pretty seamless to get that up and running. I do have a few more questions when it comes to actual management of a tip rewards program, who would manage that process and claim intake as well, and what any recommendations that council has regarding that as well.
And I would just note too that council may have seen in the staff report about our sidewalk subsidy fund right now. So we put in, it looks like about $10,000 a year for that. That has been, that hasn't been fully used last year, and it looks like it probably won't be fully used this year. So I think also going back to Hannah's recommendation about the subsidy for cleanup, that right now, that $10,000, keeping that number there and allowing both sidewalk and graffiti to utilize that fund may be sufficient and not require a discussion around additional costs. And of course, $150 kits, we can, I'm sure, absorb that cost. So I think the only question for us really, the only funding question really on the TIPS program is, if it's not one that's, I mean, it depends how many reports we get that lead to paying that cost, and also if there's any restitution that's potentially awarded from a court after the fact. It could be that that cost is also absorbed by our budget. We wouldn't really know until a program is implemented and we see how much activity we're getting from that TIPS program. So that one I think is less known, and I don't think we have the hesitancy around, making sure there's this dedicated funding source for that, until we saw some more data that was saying, oh, okay, we're spending a lot more here. We're getting a lot more reports than what we've seen in the research that we've done is that it's not significantly utilized to the point where jurisdictions are spending a lot of money on TIPS rewards. So just kind of our thoughts on that. I think from a staffing perspective and capacity, the volunteer one by far and away was our biggest concern as far as just having the capacity to be able to do that program on an ongoing basis versus, if a group is interested in doing something or there's a big tag that happens and we want to rally for a specific event, maybe that is more appropriate than having a fully established volunteer program.
All right, so our question for council is if you have, if any, program would you like to move forward with, and if there are any other questions that we can answer here tonight before we kind of move forward with any draft or further draft language.
Councilor Cunningham.
Thank you. Yeah, so I continue to support the TIP program. I think that it's an investment in enforcement and prevention, where if we can end it's typically ends up being an ongoing thing when it happens, when the large-scale graffiti incidents happen. One was over in Beckman Creek area, along the trail, the other on the west side a couple of times. And so I think that it's an investment in for the amount of damage that occurs. I didn't see it, maybe I missed it, but if we had set that cap on the damage of the graffiti in order to receive the tip as well.
Meaning that if it's under a certain dollar amount, you don't get the reward?
Right, like we're not gonna give you $250 for reporting $5 worth of graffiti. That would be kind of a silly program.
That is something that we could add to the payment section. One of the things that we did add, so we can add that if council wants to move forward with this. One of the things we did add based on the last discussion about council was allowing the city to go higher than the 250 if for some, basically if it's a large scale, if it's kind of ongoing and it's large and where circumstances may warrant a tip of a larger dollar value that the city has the discretion to offer more. But we could add in language. Is there a threshold that you think is appropriate for like a minimum?
I would probably say 500, 1,000
As the minimum?
as
Yeah.
the minimum to
The
receive
minimum amount of damage to then trigger the
250?
250.
Because I think it's saying $250 for $500 of damage. It feels kind of like a pretty harsh ratio there, but again, I think it's more about the prevention piece to kind of end the damage that's being caused, and that tends to be an ongoing thing when somebody goes on one of these multi-day sprees that we've seen. So that's, I would say for me, 500, but we kind of did discuss last time, like a sliding scale. And I think there could be some use in there, again, if we're talking about kind of ending that damage to try to bring it to a close to not have people's property damaged anymore.
Yeah, I think the challenge will be that the actual cost of the damage might not be proven until later, I guess the question would be, when would we know what that damage value is? It might not be until later, considering we're allowing people to get that reward from an arrest.
Right.
We can look into it and make a recommendation. I think that's a valid point of setting a minimum threshold, so we can do some work and come up with a recommendation for how to determine what that damage threshold is.
Okay, and then on to the other questions that, to kind of just finish with the different points that you had. The loaner kits sound great. It sounds like a great option for people to be able to go and pick up low cost, especially if it's some smaller things that occur. I've seen just a mailbox with just the 3 dots spray painted on it just for funsies. And that's really, somebody could go and grab a loaner kit and have that cleaned up, and it wouldn't, it would be much more of a convenience for them. So that's a low cost, easy option especially for those smaller issues. And then, I also see the staff recommendation. I see where staff is coming from on the volunteer program, that it is a larger kind of process that might need to be managed. I wasn't in the middle of trying to coordinate a whole kickoff to Little League. I would probably consider figuring out how to put something like that together, but give me a couple of years and maybe I'll be able to figure out a volunteer program for graffiti in the city, because this does feel like it's been my cross to bear a little bit. But yeah, so I definitely see how that is a onerous thing for our staff to deal with, and I think there's also some other options out there too, where if somebody does have something big happen and they need the help, I have seen a lot of instances where our community has come around and volunteered their time and energy to help each other and clean things up or build something for each other or do some work for each other. So I support the staff recommendations tonight.
Counselor Skull.
Yeah, I also support the staff recommendations, and along the lines of what Counselor Cunningham was talking about, maybe at some point in time, having and I think we talked about this last time, having a graduated system of reward there. Question though, is there an intent here to test this out for a while, like we were doing with the other, and then kind of lock it down?
We could definitely set up, so all of these are anticipated to be in the form of a resolution, so they wouldn't be in our code. They would be programs that council could change as needed.
Okay.
But what we could do is work into that resolution that we do annual reviews and not necessarily, it'd be a question for council if you want to put a sunset on it, but we could very easily put into the resolution that there's a review done either annually or like a 3-year, efficacy review kind of thing. That's absolutely something we could do.
Okay. And an off-subject question, who do I talk to about the sidewalk fund? I may need some work.
Yeah, it's through David Valenzuela.
It's on the website?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It is on the website.
David Valenzuela is the.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
I may use a little bit of that. Thanks.
City Council President Barry?
So thank you again for your report. I think you did a really great job. I also support everything, except for the part about the minimum graffiti limit. I'm not sure if we need that, because to me, graffiti is graffiti. Sometimes it's not necessarily the size, but it can be the location and the visibility. And the problem with graffiti is that it attracts more graffiti. And so if we have a reward to get rid of, nip it in the bud, I'm all for that. And I also love the idea of having the in-house supplies program. I think that's a really good idea. So thank you.
Jump in. My question had to do with a pilot or a review. I would think at least an annual review would be my recommendation. We're going to have turnover on council, and then people won't know what we were asking about if we wait 3 years or something like that. So hopefully there's not a lot, but it would be great to get a report every year rather than call it a pilot and then decide if it's effective. Thank you.
The only thing I'd add is, sometimes people get confused. What is the tip going to be applicable only on, for example, a sign that's on the school district? Someone might call in and report a tip. Is that, even though that's school district property, how is that is that excluded? We have utilities that aren't ours. They're owned by the Clackamas County, or, do they fall outside? And if there's changes to that, we might want to have communications with folks on what that means, so.
Yes, so the TIP program applies for any graffiti that occurs anywhere within the city limits. Public,
Okay.
private, doesn't matter. If you are able to offer information leading to an arrest regarding graffiti, as long as it's occurring within our city limits, that's the only limitation, really.
So I can see at some of the schools, someone reporting something's done at the high school or whatever, and they would fall within that
Yep.
parameter. So I can, for my purposes, I can concur with the staff recommendation. I like the sliding scale on the tip process, given that. Councilor Cunningham.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Mayor, maybe making it graffiti visible from a public right-of-way, kind of similar to how the code is written now about graffiti, that's the graffiti that our code mentions now that has to be cleaned up, and making that part of the tip process. So if it's something that occurs inside of the high school, that's the district's issue. But if it occurs out on the front sign of the high school, where we can all see it from the road, that starts to affect kind of the quality of life
I agree.
of the community. So maybe putting that language in there
Okay.
would
I agree.
Nail that.
That's good. Because also in the parks, the Metro Park, I can imagine, graffiti potentially impacting that. That's within the city limits, but it might be farther in, away from the roads.
So Graham Oaks Park is not within the city limits. Only the parking lot is.
Oh, really? Well, I learned something.
You learned something
I
new
learned
today.
something. I walk there every morning.
But if there's graffiti on the parking lot, on a parking lot sign.
Okay, all right.
I think I would have gotten that true or false question wrong, too.
Yeah. It's bizarre how, okay.
Yep. Okay, so I guess the only thing that I would like maybe some further clarity on is, I've heard from Council President Barry about maybe not doing a graffiti minimum, but I've heard from Councilor Cunningham maybe doing a graffiti minimum. Does council have an opinion one way or the other?
I thought Counselor Cunningham's idea was a good one.
Or we could also, in looking at the graduated scale, say, if it's less than this, once we can figure out kind of how you determine the damage cost, if it's less than this amount, it's just not $250, it's $50 or whatever the
$50,
case
yeah.
may be. We could do it that way.
I like that idea because it still then promotes the reporting. And yet we're not spending $250 on a $5 cleanup. Go ahead.
Say not to exceed the amount of damage done.
Okay.
So if it's $5 worth of graffiti, then sorry, all we can offer you is $5
That's
today.
actually,
That's just kind of a quick way, I think, to nail it.
that's a good idea.
Okay.
Got what you need?
So I think what we're hearing is move forward with the programs, except the volunteer program. We'll refine the language around the reward, or the payment, and we'll also talk about matching it up with our code about being visible from the right-of-way.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me see, okay, that was it.
Don't give up the floor.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thank
Work
you.
session is adjourned. The city council will meet in executive session pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute, Section 192660, subsection 2, paragraph H, legal counsel/litigation, so that council can consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of the city with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. Members of the public outside of representatives of the news media, please exit council chambers, and will be adjourned for 5 minutes, or, 5 minutes. I'll call to order the meeting of the Wilsonville City Council for March 2nd, 2026 at 7 p.m. Will the city recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Shevlin?
Here.
Council President Berry?
Here.
Counselor Cunningham?
Here.
Counselor Skoll?
Here.
Mayor O'Neill?
Here. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council President Berry, can I have a motion to approve the following order of agenda?
I move to approve the following order of the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Good evening, everyone. We're already approaching spring, and for many families with students in school, the big question right now is simple: how soon will spring break arrive? I admit I'm looking forward to it as well. It has been a very busy period, meeting with community members and working with regional, state, and federal partners. Tonight, to be brief, I'll just highlight a few items. At our February 2nd City Council meeting, and again on social media, I alerted the community that the Oregon Legislature's Joint Committee on Ways and Means was considering clawing back a portion of the $1 million secured last year for the Boone Bridge project. I asked for the community's help and my colleagues on council in protecting that funding through testimony. As I shared at our February 19th meeting, I testified in person several times, and 27 Wilsonville residents submitted testimony, including members of council. City staff assisted in this, and I'm very grateful to Government Relations Manager Everett Wild, who was also spearheading efforts making sure our city was heard. I learned today that the $1 million remains whole, that we will not be losing any money from the legislature. So I'm really proud of our community. I think we should all give each other applause. So that success allows us to take the next step. On February 25th, the Oregon Department of Transportation, working in close partnership with the city, submitted a request for $4 million in federal funding to the offices of Senator Ron Wyden and Senator Jeff Merkley for the replacement of the Boone Bridge. ODOT will also submit the same request to Congresswoman Salinas as the House begins its process. This federal earmark would build on the state funding and move the project into the next phase of work. Based on recent conversations with the senators and the Congresswoman, including our lobbying visit last October, we are optimistic they will advocate for us in this request. The application is supported by a strong coalition of state and regional leaders and community partners, including the Clackamas County Business Alliance, West Side Economic Alliance, Cisco Republic Services, ORPAC Building Products, and the Charbonneau Country Club. We are grateful for this support and will continue working with our local, regional, state, and federal partners until the Boone Bridge replacement becomes a reality. On February 21st, I attended the Wilsonville Muslim Community Center's annual Ramadan potluck gathering. I appreciated the invitation and the opportunity to spend time with members of our community, reflecting over 13 different cultures who live, work, conduct business, and invest in our community. Ramadan is a month centered on reflection, generosity, and service to those in need. This month, the city is partnering with the Wilsonville Muslim Community Center to collect hygiene items for Heart of the City and Wilsonville Community Sharing. Details are available on the city's website, and I encourage everyone, especially now, to contribute to this need. The balance of my business report will be made as a part of the written record to move on to other things tonight. Our next city council meeting will be on Monday, March 16th, starting at 7 p.m. Since there's no communications tonight, moving on to citizen input and community announcements. This is an opportunity for visitors to address the city council on any matter concerning city's business or any matter over which the council has control. It is also the time to address items not on the agenda. It is also the time to address items that are on the agenda but not scheduled for a public hearing. Staff will make every effort to respond to questions raised during community input as quickly as possible following the council meeting. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please, when conveying your remarks, whatever they may be, please speak to the council as a whole and not directly to any one member of council during your comments. Also, please note you can use the podium or sit at the tables in front of council, whatever makes you feel more comfortable. Please make sure you talk into the microphone at either location. To comment before council in person or virtually, you must sign up either by completing a speaker card at the side of the room or by using the raise hand feature in Zoom. You will need to provide your name, address, and topic you will be discussing. Information on engaging with City Council can be found on the City Council's webpage, wilsonvilleoregon.gov/City Council. As a reminder, when you begin your comment, state your name for the record and state your address, or state that your address is provided on the speaker card. Please note that this is not the only way to communicate with council or me. You're welcome to submit information in writing or via email. Additionally, I encourage you to schedule a meeting with me or any of the other councilors to discuss your concerns further. With that, the first person will be Brad Williams. Thank you.
Hi, Brad Williams. My address is on file. I'm winging it tonight. I don't have any prepared comments, but I do want to talk about town center, the town center plan, and what I heard when I watched the video of the last city council meeting. I'm really concerned about the possibility of unlimited height in the buildings. I don't quite understand how we got there, how that, we'll call it a backdoor or a cheat code, was essentially put in there for the developers. Another thing, it seemed, it's one thing if this was some sort of requirement from the state or from Metro in order to meet, some green requirement or whatever. Or was it ourselves? Did we do this? Was it our idea? And if so, why? I don't think, when the agreement was, or whatever, that it would be between 2 and 5 stories, it should have been locked in at 2 to 5 stories. I don't think people, including myself, understand the scale of this plan, right? Everything's been done sort of two-dimensionally, right? We see these little snapshots or drawings of, people walking down the promenade and buildings and things like that. But I think what needs to happen, and this will cost some money, but we need a 3D model showing what this is actually going to look like when it's completed. And the reason I say that is because I don't think you can really grasp how massive this is with something that's two-dimensional. And so let me give you an example. So if the number of housing units is approximately 1,400 units that's going to go into town center, and Vuela is approximately 140 units, that means that there would be 10 Vuelas in town center. I don't know what that looks like. I don't see how that's going to fit, right, as things are right now. Well, if the number is closer to 4,200, that's 30 Vuelas. Can 30 Vuelas fit into town center loop even with everything else torn down? I'd like to see it. So I'd like to see a 3D model with different variations of different heights of buildings that we can move around, that people can move around and say, okay, this is what this is going to look like if it's 30. This is what it looks like if it's 15 that are 10 stories high, et cetera, so that we can actually grasp how massive this project is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tim Knapp.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Tim Knapp. I realized that, my address and record is provided on the card. I realized that this is my 40th year in Wilsonville in 2026, so I think about, my goodness, what all has happened during that 40 years. It leads me to think about how do we know what it's going to look like 40 years in the future from now. And we really don't know in any precise way. We can have concepts, and I think it's critical that we have a plan so that it isn't just willy-nilly and whatever happens, but we have concepts that we've agreed on that would be desirable for our community. The Town Center Task Force that we had was probably the most robust task force that this community has ever seen. We had citizens, we had critics, we had people that were from outside the city that wondered what we were doing. We had members of the development community that actually have to build things. We had members of the retail community that said it's got to work for us before we're going to invest in this kind of a plan. And we actually had advisors and analysts from across the country that came and showed us concepts from other places in this country. So we didn't just dream it up with no context. I was impressed with the staff work, which invited all these different entities together and spent an extended period of time developing an understanding of all these different viewpoints before anybody was said, well, what do you think? You know, so let's all understand how the development works, how height of buildings interacts with retail, how the feel of it could work to our benefit or work to our detriment if we don't work carefully. We have to try to get our heads around what it takes to bring energy to a community center that will serve the citizens and will allow the businesses to prosper and encourage investment in our community. All of those future developments and businesses pay taxes, and that will work to our benefit. I think it's important that we have some humility about it, and one of the ways that I would say we should do that is by building in, I think I support the concept as it's currently presented by staff, but I think we should build in some sort of a review mechanism. And I think we've done that before, where we would agree that we're going to look at it again in 10 years or in 15 years, so that we can see how it is progressing and whether it's meeting what we thought was going to happen in a positive way or whether adjustments need to be made. To me, that would be the wisest way that we could proceed with this, and I hope you will include that concept in your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Miranda Dunn.
My name is Miranda Dunn, and my address is on the speaker card. I'm here tonight to talk about the character of our community. Wilsonville is the largest city that I have lived in. Compared to the fishing village I grew up in, it is a metropolis. Yet despite its grander scale, I have found a much greater sense of connection here in Wilsonville. We are a city of celebration, whether it be Lunar New Year or egg hunts, Juneteenth, Pride, or the 4th of July. We are a city which protects one another, whether it be through food pantries at both Wilsonville Sharing and our Clackamas Community College campus, our hygiene drive organized by the Wilsonville Muslim Community Center, and affordable housing at Vuela. We are a city which stewards our natural environment with our parks and trail systems. As a result, we are a city which hosts deer, mountain lions, otters, and many other creatures. We are a city of diversity and belonging. This is the sentiment that council has echoed over and over again. Yet when community members express fear that a mythical 6-story building will apply for a waiver and that 6-story building could steal the spirit of our city, City Council validates that fear by launching a task force. When we are presented with the false belief that our culture derives from concrete and scaffolding rather than the people, Council remains silent. As we talk about the people who could live in these tall buildings, I have been dumbstruck by Council's constant silence. 92% of jobs in Wilsonville are held by people who live outside of Wilsonville. Our future neighbors are the cashiers, the caregivers, the teachers, and the waiters we interact with daily. They need a place in our community. They are the people who contribute their labor to our city but cannot afford housing in our city. We need not be afraid of them. What we should be concerned about are leaders who are happy to speak certain values at election time, but who cannot commit to action on those same values once they're elected. Individuals who say we are a city of diversity and belonging, but launch task forces to eliminate building height waivers or persecute the poor with RV permit systems. Town Center Plan is an opportunity to create physical diversity and belonging in our city, an opportunity to expand our celebration and protection for one another, whilst being good stewards of our natural environment. I implore City Council to dedicate itself to affordability in Town Center rather than capitulating to distractions on building height waivers. Let's live up to our commitment as a city of diversity and belonging. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? No? Okay. We'll now turn to new business. First item is resolution number 3244. I would ask.
I think
Oh.
you're actually on
Oh,
council comments.
skipped. I did it again. Boy, I really want to shorten this meeting up. Sorry, guys. Just totally eliminate the council comments. Gee, boy. Revolt very quickly. Now turning to councilor comments, liaison reports, and meeting announcements. Council President Berry.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief also. My computer just, there we go. So highlight of my week, on Saturday, I attended Senator Courtney Neron Mislin's town hall, where she updated the issues that she's working on that's facing Wilsonville. And then I went over and attended the Representative Andrea Salinas town hall, where she discussed her work that's helping Wilsonville. So those were both really well attended in my view, and I thought time well spent. I was really glad that I got to attend. And then for this week, on Wednesday, I'll be attending the Tourism Committee, and then I will also be helping play bingo at the community center with my colleague right here, Councilor Shevlin. So I just wanted to also point out that we have the Hearts of Wilsonville auction that's going on right now. It's going to end on March 6th. It's a fundraiser where you see the different hearts statues that are around the city. Some of them are up for auction to raise money so that we can do more art projects in the city. There's a flyer out by the door there if you want more information, and also on the Wilsonville website. And then the new Boone's Ferry Messenger has come out. Our staff does an excellent job posting different articles about all the happenings in Wilsonville, and I encourage you to take a good look and see what's going on and learn more about our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cunningham.
I don't have a ton to cover tonight, so I'm just going to pass tonight.
Fair enough. Councilor Shevlin.
Thank you. Well, likewise, I'll be short. I will, as Council President Barry pointed out, she and I will be calling bingo at the Senior Center. This will be quite an honor. Apparently, this is a rite of passage for elected officials in town. So we're looking forward to helping the seniors play bingo. It should be a lot of fun. And then on Thursday this week, the mayor and I will be attending a Clackamas County Coordinating Committee meeting in Malala. Apparently Malala has a new police station, so we'll get a chance to tour the new police station. I just want to take a moment, though, to thank our staff and also particularly the mayor for all the work that he's been doing in testifying before the short session. I'll remind everyone that our Oregon legislature is currently in its short session. That by law is just a little bit over a month period of time this year, and there's a lot of work to be done. Mayor reported on the great news about the funding for the Boone Bridge. He continues to work diligently on that topic, as well as many, many other topics that he's provided, either oral testimony or written testimony on topics that are so important for our city in order to be able to preserve the quality of life that we enjoy here in the city. I also want to thank Government Relations Manager Everett Wild and our city attorney, Ms. Guile Hinman, as well as other staff members who helped prepare for that testimony. So the session only goes until March 8th, and there's still a lot of work to do, and I appreciate the work that our mayor does for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Skoll?
Okay, I'll try to keep this brief also. On February 27th, I continued my meetings with Neil Kennedy, who is the Charbonneau Community Safety Coordinator, with the intent to learn as much as possible about the Charbonneau Emergency Preparedness Program and attempt to and work towards basically spreading that across the whole Wilsonville community. Through this effort, I've got quite a few, actually starting to accumulate some volunteers and some other HOA, different HOAs throughout the community that are interested in this program, and Neil and I are going to work together to basically build a larger program. On the 28th, I attended Congresswoman's Andrea Salinas' town hall at Meridian Creek, and I'll basically just Council President Barry explained that, and it was a very good turnout. It was a very good discussion, lots of great questions and interesting answers, to say the least. I've had various resident meetings throughout the community during this time also, speaking about a lot of the different issues that are going on in Wilsonville. Moving forward, on March 11th, I'll be participating in, as a judge in the Wilsonville High School Science Fair. It's the annual Crest Jane Good Science Symposium, and that'll be an all-day event working through a lot of different science projects that the high school is preparing and competing with each other on. I look forward to that. That'll be different. And then on March 18th, I'll be touring the PGE facility, emergency or control facility in Tualatin. And then a few other community activities going on, some dates I wanted to remind everybody on. Council President Barry mentioned the Hearts of Wilsonville silent auction. That current bidding goes on now till 4 o'clock on March 6th. There's the Wilsonville Public Library Series Space Talks continues on March 7th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The lectures are free and appropriate for all ages. The Frog Pond Primary School grand opening is on March 11th at 5 o'clock. And this is an important part of making the Frog Pond neighborhood complete. And many thanks to the West Linn Wilsonville High School District for building such a beautiful school that will become an important asset for our entire community. Next on the list is a talk on Saturday, March 14th from 1 to 2 by a local author named George Sorensen about his book called The Cello Who Loved Me. And you hear this, it basically is a story about how a surprise recital walking the Camino de Santiago Trail in Europe, where during that time he learned how to play cello. There's also, a tiny arts festival activity going on at the library that will go from March 6th to March 27th. These are miniature masterpieces which are divided into different age categories, and winners from each category will be announced in April. So stop by and see the talents of your neighbors. And then the DEI cultural calendar, there's multiple activities going on right now. And so March is the Women's History Month. And then on Wednesday, March 4th, is Holi, a Hindu celebration known as the Festival of Colors. Love and spring. It celebrates the eternal divine love of the deities, Radha and Krishna. And so that activity will be, I don't have a time on that, but that'll be March 4th. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is our consent agenda. Will the city attorney please read the items on consent?
Resolution number 3242, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville to authorize the city manager to execute a construction contract with S-2 Contractors, Inc. for the 2026 crack ceiling project, capital improvement project number 4014. Resolution number 3243, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with Interlaken, Inc. for the Beckman Creek Flow Mitigation Project, capital improvement project 7068. Resolution number 3258, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the city manager to execute a financing contract with Oregon Business Development Department for the design of the Coffee Creek Day Road Sewer Extension Project, capital improvement project number 2115, and minutes of the February 19, 2026 council meeting.
Thank you. City Council President Barry, can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I move to adopt the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Now turning to new business. First item is resolution number 3244. I will ask staff, the city attorney, and incoming city manager Gina Troja to give the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, I'm Amanda Guile-Hinman, City Attorney, and tonight with me is...
I'm Gina Troja, I'm the Assistant City Manager.
And tonight we are for council's consideration is resolution number 3244, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing a review of building height waiver provisions in the Wilsonville Code applicable to Town Center. So if adopted, this resolution authorizes a review of building height waiver provisions in the Wilsonville Code applicable to the Wilsonville Town Center. Staff previously presented on this item at the council work session on February 19th. As a brief background, the Town Center plan was adopted by council via ordinance number 835 on April 15, 2019, after a multi-year planning process. Ordinance number 835, in addition to adopting the Town Center plan, had several other documents that it adopted that accompanied that plan, including, in particular, updates to Chapter 4 of the Wilsonville Code, which is referred to as our Development Code or our Land Use Regulations. In 2018 and in the beginning of 2019, as the Planning Commission reviewed drafts of updates to the Development Code regarding Town Center, members of the Planning Commission discussed adding some flexibility regarding floor plates and building height. These work session discussions led to creating a process in the Development Code for an applicant to seek a waiver to floor plate size and building height for developments within 2 of the 4 subdistricts in the Town Center. So to be clear, the waiver process is not allowed for buildings in the Main Street District or the Neighborhood Mixed-Use District. The waiver process requires an applicant to select an item from each of 2 menus to improve the development to, quote, clearly go substantially above and beyond code requirements and typical building and site design to create a sense of place and mitigate negative impacts of the project related to the reason for the waiver, end quote. The concept of the waiver process is to ensure that negative impacts of obtaining the waiver are mitigated through other enhancements to the development to ensure that the vision of the Town Center plan is still met. For the council's and the community's reference, Attachment A to the staff report for this resolution provides links and timestamps to all of the relevant Planning Commission and City Council meetings specific to this waiver issue. Going back to even before when the waiver was discussed, how the discussions around building height and floor plate that then led to the creation of that waiver language. So that way for council or the community, if anyone is interested in understanding where the Planning Commission discussion started and how they evolved to that waiver process, that's available with links and timestamps. When staff further reviewed this waiver language as part of the overarching review of the Town Center plan and accompanying documents for the current Council Goal 4, the building height waiver provision presents an opportunity to improve upon the provision to ensure that it continues to meet the vision of the Town Center plan and community expectations. As such, resolution number 3244 provides a process to review the building height waiver provisions applicable to Town Center, which may result in proposed revisions to such provisions. The process that's outlined in the resolution includes staff forming a limited duration task force to review the waiver language and recommend any proposed revisions, input and recommendation from the Planning Commission in accordance with Oregon law and the Wilsonville Code, and and council consideration to adopt any recommended revisions. Staff has outlined a process to complete this work by fall of 2026. So that is an overview of what Resolution 3244 covers, and so we're happy to take any questions or engage in any further discussion on this item with council.
Anybody have any questions at this point? Okay. Nothing at this time. So
Okay.
You want us to present can we proceed on the motion? Okay. Council, can I have a motion? I'll just open up to anybody concerning resolution number 3244.
I move to adopt resolution number 3244.
Okay. City Council President Berry has made a motion to adopt resolution number 3244. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motions passes 5-0. Next, we turn to the Town Center Communication Plan project.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The second item before you tonight is related to the Town Center Communication Plan. Just as a reminder, this is part of one of your council goals. The goal was to hire a consultant to develop and conduct education outreach campaign on Town Center Plan, urban renewal, and other infrastructure funding sources. At your last council meeting, we brought forward before you the framework for a Town Center Communications Plan. You gave us direction to go back and refine that plan and to come back to you for consideration and adoption. Tonight, I have CFM advocates who are here. They are Paige Strickler is here. I'm going to have her come forward. I think we're getting the PowerPoint presentation loaded here for you, who's going to walk through that plan. The plan was also in your council packet in greater detail. Paige is going to cover just the highlights of that plan, and then there'll be an opportunity if you have questions or for conversation.
Thank you. As we're pausing
get
for
ready.
For a moment.
technical, yeah.
Yeah, why don't you come up here? You can come up here. No?
How about that sunny weather?
Right? I think we're almost there.
Yep,
I'm watching Amanda's screen. It looks like she's,
I'm getting there.
oh, look at that. So again, this is Paige Strickler. She is with CFM Advocates. They've been the ones working on putting together the plan that's before you tonight. And then I'll just turn it over to her.
Good evening, Mayor, City Councilors. Nice to see you again. Let's see if I can do this. Yes. So a couple weeks ago, I came to talk about kind of a broad outline of the strategic communications plan that we are helping to draft with your staff. And the goal of the plan, as you may remember, is to give community members a reliable, accessible, and informative place to go for information about the Town Center Plan as well as urban renewal. The strategic framing for this plan is about really centered on the feedback we heard from the community that they want the town center to be the heart of Wilsonville. And this came from the outreach we did not only with the focus groups last October, but as well as the questionnaire that was sent at the end of last year, as well as building on previous outreach efforts. This is a slide that you are familiar with. We used it a couple weeks ago, but these are kind of the communication vehicles that we're planning to use. And we are going to work hand in hand with your staff to evaluate the materials that they already have, figure out if there's any gaps or holes to create new materials for the public, and then package it in a way that makes it really accessible to your community members to find out any information that they may need. There are several topics that we're going to focus on in the communications plan, and I won't go through them all, but I'll just highlight a few. I think we think it's important to let folks know how and why the town center plan was developed and the flexibility that is inherent in the plan. And that a great example was the resolution tonight that Amanda spoke to. Also, we want to acknowledge the desire for more parks and open space that we heard from the community and how that might be realized through this plan. And there's also some uncertainty about the timeline. And so as best we can to kind of focus and give people a clear indication of what the timeline could look like. And also to give examples. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty in people's minds of what urban renewal funding can be used for, so give them examples of how it's been used in the past. And also highlight what folks really want to see in the town center. And this is what we heard last fall. They want, local businesses, restaurants, food trucks, and entertainment venues. So this is a very high-level proposed outreach calendar. Again, once we kind of get a sense of what materials you all have and what might be needed, and we start kind of diving and drilling down into community calendars, we can put a much more detailed outreach strategy plan in front of you. And I remember Councilmember Skull 2 weeks ago, I guess, you really wanted to make sure that all the demographics, different ages of populations are reached, and that will certainly go into the more refined plan that we bring forward. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Councilor Skull?
So yes, thank you very much. I think that's very important because this is a generational plan, and I think it's important that we do as much as we can to engage the younger generations who are going to realize the benefit from this as we can. And I also have a suggestion in terms of the communication information. And I think it was mentioned in public testimony this evening. Maybe in some way in the information we can kind of break this down into chunks in terms of timeline and have a town center 2035, town center 2045, town center 2055, or something of that sort, so that in the communication it can be realized that this is not going to happen in the next 6 months. This is going to happen over the next 20 or 30 years. I ran into this project plan that was going on in Camas, and Camas has a similar town center redevelopment going on right now, and they call it Town Center 2045, which tells you that it's 20, 30 years out, and that's in the title of the actual plan itself. And I think that's critical in terms of communication, so that the public, whether they already live here or whether they're coming here and kind of learning about the community, they understand that this is a long-term project, and it's a long-term development project for the benefit of the community on a generational basis. So it's just a suggestion to see if we can't maybe think about, integrating some of that type information into the presentation.
Anybody else? Councilor Shevlin?
Thank you, and thank you again for coming and reminding us of all this good work. I'm very excited about this beginning. I do believe we heard some good testimony tonight in our public comment about the idea of putting in checkpoints along the way, making sure that we are meeting the needs of the community, because the community will change. This is the generational application for our future. I believe, and I know this was high level today, we had discussed some social media presence. And so I just wanted to confirm that that would be part of the communication plan.
That's correct. Your city has several social media applications that we'll be utilizing and building on.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Counselor Cunningham.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on one of the comments made during citizen testimony from former Mayor Knapp, mentioning the build-in and reviews every 10 to 15 years. I love that idea that we would come back and look at it and make sure that it's, meeting the needs and expectations of our community. I think that's something that some council 10, 15 years from now should be involved in. I will mention, though, just as we are kind of looking at our options with Town Center right now and in 2026, let alone in 10 or 15 years, that our options are limited. This review of the waivers is an option that luckily our staff found for us as a possibility. But, when we talk about housing and things like that, we are finding ourselves more and more handcuffed to the original plan. So a review in 10 to 15 years, I think would be positive, given the constraints we're under right now, right here. It might be limited. I also love the idea that Mr. Williams brought up as well of a 3D model that as part of the communication, being able to physically show not just, again, the overhead 2D model or lines on a on a piece of paper, but really the breadth and width of what that would look like. And I think that would help to allow people to really put themselves in the middle of it. So, thank you.
City Attorney has a
Yeah.
comment.
Thank you, Mayor. One thing that I did want to note, for those of you who may be familiar with our Coffee Creek Industrial Form-Based Code, for that program, because it was the first time we were doing it, we set up a review process based on number of applications or number of years, whichever occurred first. So if council is interested in periodic review of Town Center, that is something that we can also incorporate into potentially any revision regarding the development code. That could be something that we add in that ordinance. So with council's blessing, I'll just incorporate that into that consideration into that work product.
City Council President Berry.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm really excited to see a really good, clear, clean, succinct communication plan for helping us get the town center improvements going. I'd like to see the blight going away and seeing positive development that is to the satisfaction of our community. So I think that this is a real key part, explaining what the town center plan is, that it's a long-range plan, and then how we have to finance to get the infrastructure going so that developers will want to come in and build. So I appreciate what you're doing, and I'm really excited about it. Thank you.
Yeah, I also appreciate everything you've done. I can, with the comments, I kind of echo the struggle that our city has had over the years. We have a vast difference of opinions on what our town centers should be. I've kind of watched this for a lot of us have been over the years, watched it for a while, and as new people come in, they might have different thoughts. And I think that's the nature of the process, that there'll always be another way to do things. So ultimately, we have to make a final decision and move forward. And I think I like the idea of the 3D model. I think the last time this was presented to the community, I thought, why wasn't there a 3D model or something that was more visual, even though we have to realize that 3D models are pure fiction because you don't really know what it's going to be like and back then, but at least it's a vision that people can see. So I commend that suggestion. The task force, we've talked, we're doing a limited one, but I call it a task force. And so the city manager and the city attorney might say, what are you doing? But I do believe that, I've always believed that we should have an ongoing group that is an oversight of this project in the years ahead. So a task force that, and I don't know if that's our planning commission, but something that keeps, in my opinion, keeps tabs on this after it starts. So I believe that my goal is to see this, once we get to the urban renewal discussion, hopefully urban renewal vote this November, but to me, that oversight after that, if that is successful and passes, that oversight should somehow be created as a process that the community can see years ahead, how things are going, whether or not there needs to be some sort of, thought back then. Not something we vote on and we can't go back and look at. Okay, anything else? Okay.
Real quick.
Sure, Councilor Cunningham.
Can you go back to the timeline slide you had? So just kind of looking at this, just kind of wondering, it seems like a pretty wide timeline from March all the way till November, and why the timing is kind of so spread out and not a little bit more focused towards, an eventual vote in November of having that maybe more directed over kind of a tighter campaign of approaching that milestone.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, and I originally had a much more detailed, but it was all based on what I thought the city had in terms of collateral and the events you all have, and so decided to kind of go scale it back a little bit, be broader, and then as I meet with your staff and as we kind of develop the timeline together, we can go into a lot more specifics, like exactly what events are going to be held, what kind of town halls, where, and all of that. So it's purposely vague right now until we work with your city to kind of determine the next steps.
Great, appreciate it, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. I think we're done on new business. Is that correct? Do we need a motion on that?
Yeah, I think we were going to have, if we can get a motion
Okay,
and a
I'm
vote
sorry, I
on that,
didn't-
that would be great to approve the communications plan.
Okay, I didn't see that as something I needed to do. I apologize. Can I have a motion, please, to approve our communication strategy as outlined by staff this evening?
I move to adopt the Town Center Communication Plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, tonight we'll have a public hearing to consider on first reading ordinance number 901. The order of procedure for tonight's hearing is set out in detail in our city code. In brief, we will start with a staff report. Next, the public will be asked to provide testimony. I will ask everyone who signed up in advance to testify first in the order in which they signed up. Then I'll ask if anyone present in council chambers would like to testify, and then I will ask anyone who is on Zoom meeting who has not testified but would like to testify to do so. After each person testifies, councilors may pose questions to me to be addressed by the person who testified or to staff to clarify any information that was conveyed in the testimony. Once the city council has heard from everyone, the city council is satisfied it has all the information it needs to render a decision, the public hearing will be closed, council deliberates, and I will announce the result. We wish to hear from everyone who wants to testify. However, we request that you refrain from repeating testimony already given by someone else. If you agree with what someone before you has said, please provide your testimony indicating that you concur with what has been previously said. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. We will time the testimony and provide you with a visual warning when there's 1 minute remaining. The public hearing is now open at 7:49 p.m. I'd ask the staff to present the report.
Excellent, thank you. Does it want to pop up? No, I don't think so. I might need your expertise. It wants to go to OneDrive. Apologies, we even practiced this earlier. So. There it is.
All right, my apologies for the delay. Mayor O'Neill, Council President Berry, councilors, we appreciate your time tonight. So my name's Chris Myers. I'm a senior planner here at the city of Wilsonville. With me tonight, I have Nicole Underwood from Eco Northwest. Also from Eco Northwest, joining us virtually is Beth Goodman. Hello, Beth. And of course, you know Matt Lorenzen, our economic development manager here at the city of Wilsonville. So tonight we're here for a public hearing for Ordinance 901 to adopt the 2026 Economic Opportunities Analysis, which you saw in work sessions in August 2025 and another glimpse of it in December of 2025. So Nicole has led much of the work for the Economic Opportunities Analysis, and she's going to guide you through the presentation tonight. Before we do that, I'm just going to give a brief recap, both for reference and reminder to council, but also in case there's someone watching online or in the audience who doesn't know what we're talking about. So what we are talking about is the Wilsonville Industrial Land Readiness Project. And that's a coordinated citywide effort focused on preparing key employment land for future development, with particular emphasis on the Basalt Creek planning area in the northwest corner of Wilsonville, just north of Coffee Creek. Now, this effort will position Wilsonville for long-term economic growth and investment. So the project is two phases. Phase one was the focused analysis of the Basalt Creek planning area, and phase two is the comprehensive citywide evaluation of industrial land readiness. Now, together, these phases will inform long-range planning and implementation of the Basalt Creek Master Plan. So there are several key components of the Basalt Creek Master Plan, and one of them is here as Ordinance 901, the Economic Opportunities Analysis. And that's going to give us inventories of available land, forecasts future needs, as well as ensures an adequate land supply to support future industrial growth. All right. So can you go next slide for me? Thank you. So Nicole is going to take the presentation here in just a few minutes. We'll obviously have time to answer any questions. Just a quick reminder, and you'll see this part again, we are here asking, we have a requested action, which is adopting the 2026 Economic Opportunities Analysis as a sub-element of the Wilsonville Comprehensive Plan. Next slide. I have one last slide for you. In your packet materials, you will see Ordinance 901, all that fun whereas language that we love so much. Also the staff report with the EOA, the Economic Opportunities Analysis, and all the appendices you see listed there, as well as the EOA findings report. And then lastly is the full EOA record for Resolution LP 260001, which is the Planning Commission's unanimous recommendation to council to approve the Economic Opportunities Analysis. So with that, I will actually hand it over to Nicole to take you through the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So as Chris has been saying, we're going to talk to you about the EOA tonight and the Economic Development Strategy. We have presented on these before, so I'm going to keep it pretty high level and touch on the kind of key findings, but I'm happy to take questions as they arise. So what is an EOA and why do one? An EOA is an analysis that meets certain legal requirements in Oregon around the statewide land use planning system, so Goal 9, the economy. Goal 9 requires cities to plan for the local economy and to ensure they have enough suitable land to accommodate 20 years of employment growth. It plays a specific role in the comprehensive plan, so if the city adopts the EOA, it becomes a part of the plan's factual foundation. Then when the city considers plan or map amendments in the future that require findings, the EOA is one of the primary documents you rely on to support those findings. So like whether the city has adequate land in the right categories to justify those changes. There are other reasons as well. The EOA documents existing conditions and forecasts future needs. That information feeds directly into the economic development strategy, which we'll talk to you a bit more about tonight, and helps the city coordinate across land use planning, infrastructure planning, and other actions that support economic development. So Chris already mentioned this. This is part of the Wilsonville Industrial Land Readiness Project. This is the citywide portion, this is the citywide portion, which includes the EOA and Economic Development Strategy. The last time you updated your economic opportunity analysis was in 2012. So we're going to dig right into the analysis now. An important part of understanding Wilsonville's opportunity is really knowing how much land you have available for employment growth in the future. And so to do this, we develop a buildable lands inventory, or BLI. We start by identifying all land in Wilsonville that is designated for employment uses. This includes land within the comprehensive plan designations of industrial, commercial, town center, and undesignated. That is that purple area up in the Basalt Creek, or more specifically West Railroad area, that is planned for industrial but hasn't yet got a comprehensive plan designation yet. And so this land base forms the starting point for understanding land available for future development. Next, we remove land with constraints that limit development potential. So this includes things like floodways, steep slopes, resource overlays, and protected areas. By removing these constraints, we're left with a more accurate picture of the land that's realistically available for employment uses. So we also classify the land based on development status: vacant, partially vacant, or developed. Partially vacant land just refers to land that has potentially some development on it, but could still grow in, or have additional development in the future. And so what you see on this slide is a summary of vacant employment land by comprehensive plan designation after constraints have been removed. In total, Wilsonville has about 366 acres of unconstrained buildable employment land, and most of that is in the industrial designations, or about 96%, and that's in the dark blue and purple on the map. In contrast, there are only about 13 acres of vacant, unconstrained commercial land citywide. However, the city does have a substantial redevelopment potential in town center, and then you've got some large buildings that have reuse potential as well. So, with the land inventory in place, the next question is really about demand. What level of employment growth should the city be planning for, and then what types of land will that employment need? So to ground, we start with current employment in Wilsonville. So in 2023, Wilsonville had about 22,800 covered jobs, meaning jobs that are covered by unemployment insurance. So this chart here highlights the 6 largest employment sectors in Wilsonville, and that orange line, or maybe red line, shows your city wage, your average city wage of about $78,000, and then the gray line is the average regional wage. So 3 of the largest sectors, manufacturing, wholesale, trade, and construction, are considered industrial sectors and together account for about 40% of employment in Wilsonville. All 3 pay above the citywide average wage. Professional and technical services also offers strong wages. And then retail, trade, and administrative services employ many workers but does tend to have slightly lower wages. So between 2007 and 2023, the city added about 2,900 jobs. That's an increase of about 15%, which is similar to regional trends over the same period. The fastest growing sectors were in construction, wholesale trade, and professional services, with construction and wholesale trade in particular outpacing regional trends. Meanwhile, sectors like management of companies, transportation and warehousing, and manufacturing saw small declines over this period. So when selecting a forecast for growth, we considered local, regional, and statewide economic trends along with Wilsonville's specific strengths and weaknesses for business attraction. And we brought this to City Council back in August, and the city and City Council and Planning Commission both agreed that the Oregon Employment Department's regional growth rate was the one that we should use. So this growth rate of 0.85% is a modest growth rate, and it reflects the slower overall economic trends that we're seeing. It also reflects the fact that Wilsonville has a decent amount of industrial land, but it will take time to get it ready for development. But still recognizing that Wilsonville is a regional job center, and so you are going to see some growth. So under this forecast, Wilsonville is expected to add about 6,100 jobs by 2046, requiring roughly 320 acres of industrial land and 110 acres of commercial land. So given that projected growth, these are the key EOA conclusions. They answer the basic question: does Wilsonville have enough land to support future employment growth? So for industrial, the city has enough land overall, but near-term readiness remains a challenge. Many sites are small and lack urban-level infrastructure, so the city will likely need site assembly and targeted infrastructure investment to make that land development ready. And then for commercial, vacant land is limited, but the city has substantial redevelopment potential in, especially in town center. You have large vacant buildings, including the former Albertsons, Regal Cinemas, Fry's Electronics, that create near-term opportunities for for reuse as well. And I'm going to move into the economic development strategy unless you would like me to pause for questions here first.
Any questions? Go
Okay.
ahead.
So, shifting to the economic development strategy, this is where the city translates the EOA findings and engagement input into a set of actions to support economic development in the future. We started this process by identifying 6 desired outcomes that define long-term economic success for Wilsonville over the next 10 years. And so these outcomes are shortened but listed here. Those outcomes being Basalt Creek and Coffee Creek are building out or showing momentum in building out. Town Center is actively redeveloping with housing, civic uses, and retail. Zoning and infrastructure investments balance residents and industry needs. Retail and restaurant offerings are expanding. Employment opportunities with higher than average wages are expanding, and then Wilsonville is recognized regionally for advanced industrial employment, quality of life, and high caliber customer service. And so these are the outcomes we're looking to achieve with the economic development strategy. So as a part of this process, we conducted engagement. This included a technical advisory committee made up of regional economic development partners, along with interviews with local businesses, developers, and property owners. Across the conversations, we heard some themes. So employers are struggling to find workers with the right skills, and there's a growing need for upskilling. Businesses face tight space and land constraints. High rents and tenant improvement costs are creating barriers for companies, especially smaller businesses. We also heard that residents are, having to go elsewhere for services and shopping that they can't find locally. And finally, we also heard that businesses and developers express a desire for proactive partnership with the city, particularly in navigating regulations, accessing resources, and really finding a path to yes. So from that engagement and technical work, we identified 6 focus areas listed here. Each represents a point where the city can make progress through investment, policy, and partnership towards its desired outcomes. The strategy is built around these areas with 16 total actions, and the details of those strategies are included in Appendix C of the EOA. But broadly, the focus areas and their actions address industrial land readiness, funding gaps to support economic development, commercial redevelopment, retail expansion, workforce support, and small business assistance. The actions in the economic development strategy are city-led, but many will require partnerships with regional and state organizations as well as the private sector. And then in the strategy, we also split actions into near-term items that fit within current capacity and longer-term items that depend on new funding or additional city resources that City Council would consider as that becomes available. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'll hand it back to Chris for questions or to close out.
Yeah, I just got one more. So just as a reminder, this is, we're asking for adoption of the 2026 Economic Opportunities Analysis as a sub-element of the Wilsonville Comprehensive Plan. Last slide, please. And just as a next steps, right now we're scheduled for second reading on March 16th, 2026, if everything moves forward in that manner. So with that, that is the presentation. Open up for questions.
Amen. Council, have any questions? Councilor Skull.
So with the economic projections in today's world economy, how confident are you with the numbers that are projected?
For the EOA, the numbers that we used?
For the EOA, yeah.
I mean, I will say with a forecast or projection of any kind, it's never going to be 100%, but
True.
I think, and we spoke with you all about this last time, you have a lot going for you with the land that's available, and so we do expect that you would grow. Not all cities have the type of not all cities have industrial land like you have. But the reality is it's not ready for development. And so this is a 20-year forecast. We're expecting that that land would become ready over that period. And so if things happen that it's not, you would probably want to revisit your EOA and revisit those projections. But those are some of the things that we were considering when we recommended what we would consider kind of a middle-of-the-road growth. It's not as high as we could be looking at, and it's not as low as the metro region overall is projecting, which I think is about half the rate. So confidence, I think it's a good choice, but it is something you would want to revisit if some of your land does not get development ready.
So the last time that we looked at this or updated this was 2012, and that's a pretty big gap. I mean, in today's world, as fast as things are moving, should that gap be 5 years or, I mean, do you think that the gap that's there is too much or too little? I mean, I'm not sure how you would gauge it from a data perspective.
Yeah, I was going to have Beth step in, but Matt, if you'd like to step in.
Well, I'll take a shot at it and then Beth can correct me. I think typically we'd be reviewing an EOA every 10 years is the typical cadence. There was a global pandemic that kind of disrupted things and shifted timelines. So, yeah, I think that the timeline was too long and that we would be looking at a timeline closer to 10 years. If macroeconomic conditions, geopolitics, whatever the case may be, really change the world again, maybe that 10-year timeline changes or is expedited.
Okay. Last question.
Beth?
One more? Can we get one more? Retail. Define retail. I mean, I see retail as, it can be food service or it could be goods and services, whatever. How do you, is that all packaged into one? You know, because say for instance, general retail like a Target or, you know, Walmart and stuff like that, you know, that space is changing quite quickly, you know, going from bricks and mortar over to online and all that. So, how do you define what you have in there as retail?
Are you, I think, are you referring to the economic development strategy and how we're talking about it, or potentially the EOA in commercial land?
Actually, both.
Okay.
Because one affects the other.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you
So
know.
when we think about commercial, it's encompassing all those things that you're talking about. You know, it's the broader split of industrial versus commercial. And so commercial would include your large targets, but it would also include your small businesses, your small mom and pop restaurants and that kind of thing. When we were putting together the economic development strategy, we did kind of parse those pieces apart a little bit. And so in I think it's focus area 4, we talk about unique retail and shopping experiences. And when we're thinking about that, we're thinking about making more opportunities for smaller businesses or and those types of things. Another thing you brought up was those shifting trends. And I know in the EOA, we talk about how that impacts commercial, the demand for commercial space. And I might tap Beth in here to help talk about that.
Well, I wanted to talk about something. So.
Okay, I know, I can see her unmuting.
So when you think about retail broadly. Things that are experiential. Those types of retail can't go online. So while I'll just pick on furniture. While some people are willing to buy a sofa online, a lot of people aren't necessarily. So that's sort of in that space that might be experiential. Things like bouncy houses and gymnastic things and restaurants and arcades. Those are all, you know, experiential. They're all part of commercial. And then there's other types of commercial, some of which you get online, but some of which you still have very much in person. So things like people who cut your hair, you can't get that done online yet. Banking, you still have, you know, in-person banking, so some brick and mortar things. So commercials, including a wide range of different uses. A portion of which is what you might refer to, generally speaking, as retail.
Okay. Yeah, because I get the feeling over time that, you know, from a retail perspective, you see the big box stuff, the chain restaurants. I kind of see over time, 10 years from now, that phasing out, and it becomes more of a boutique environment. across the board, you know, and those boutique activities will serve a tighter community rather than a broader community. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that fits in over time, thus the time, you know, the time gap between now and the next run. So, thank you.
Counselor Shevlin.
Thank you. Wilsonville has a proud history of planning and planning well and recognizing our potential and then looking out to see what we need to do next. And if this plan, which is part of, it's a what are we calling it, a sub-element of the comprehensive plan. So if it's adopted, it really carries forward our legacy of planning, of looking forward, of not just being comfortable with where we are, but realizing that there's so much more that's beyond us, beyond this council, beyond all of the work that you've done, that we have to look for, as Councilor Skull says, generational decisions for the future. So I believe it's very strong. I'm looking forward to the second reading and hearing from our community, but it really does carry forward the legacy that we have established, and all of those that have come before us have done that great foundational work. This just builds on that foundation. Thank you.
Any other? City Council President Barry.
I would just like to ditto what she just said. Good job, thank you.
Okay. I concur. I think things are well presented. And I appreciate your presentation. With that, do we have anybody signed up for public testimony? Okay, no one online? Okay, is anybody in the audience want to testify? Okay, seeing none. I am going to close the hearing at 8:12 p.m. Does the city council wish to continue? Well, no, let's try that again. Does anybody, with closing the hearing, can I have a motion to consider on ordinance number 901?
I move to adopt ordinance number 901 on first reading.
Thank you. City Council President has made a motion to adopt. Any second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay. City manager business. Nothing tonight, Your Honor. City attorney business.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay. The meeting's adjourned, 8:13 p.m.